The topic we'll cover is cost management. The process is used to plan, estimate, budget, and control project costs so the project is delivered within its approved financial resources. In waterfall projects, costs are planned in detail up front and tracked closely against a cost baseline. The project manager is responsible for ensuring that all work stays within the approved budget while still meeting scope and quality requirements. Cost management begins with estimating costs for each activity or work package. The exam may test you on several techniques. Analogous estimating uses historical data from similar projects and is fast but less accurate. Parametric estimating uses data-driven models, such as cost per square foot or cost per unit, and is more reliable when data is available. Bottom-up estimating aggregates detailed estimates at the activity level to build up the total cost, which is the most accurate but also the most time-consuming. Three-point estimating, also known as PERT, uses optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely values to provide a range-based estimate. Once activity costs are estimated, they are rolled up through cost aggregation into the project's total estimated cost. These values are then combined into the cost baseline, which includes contingency reserves for known risks. When you add management reserves for unknown risks, which are controlled by the sponsor, you arrive at the total project budget. During execution, cost performance is monitored using Earned Value Management, or EVM. You'll need to be comfortable with the core variables: planned value, earned value, and actual cost. The exam may also test you on key formulas. Cost variance is EV minus AC, schedule variance is EV minus PV, the cost performance index is EV divided by AC, and the schedule performance index is EV divided by PV. It is essential you understand what the numbers mean. A positive variance indicates favorable performance, while a negative variance indicates a problem. For CPI and SPI, values greater than 1 mean the project is performing efficiently, while values less than 1 signal cost overruns or schedule delays. Beyond these, you'll need to understand forecasts. Estimate at completion, or EAC, has multiple formulas depending on project conditions. It can be BAC divided by CPI when future performance is expected to be similar to the past, or AC plus ETC when remaining work is estimated again. EAC can also be AC plus BAC minus EV if future work is expected to follow the original plan. Finally, EAC can also be equal to AC plus BAC minus EV divided by CPI times SPI if both cost and schedule performance are expected to impact the remaining work. Estimate to complete, or ETC, is equal to EAC minus AC, which is the expected cost to finish the remaining work. Variance at completion, or VAC, is the budget at completion minus the estimate at completion. We went over these EVM formulas very quickly in this review. If you struggle to understand these formulas, take a pause here or check out our EVM simplified video next. But most importantly, expect questions that require interpreting these numbers to determine whether a project is over or under budget and whether it is ahead or behind schedule. Another concept you should know is funding limit reconciliation, which ensures that planned expenditures do not exceed the organization's cash flow limits. If spending spikes are forecasted, the project manager may need to reschedule work or adjust resources to smooth expenditures. You'll also need to understand reserves. Contingency reserves are allocated for known risks and are part of the cost baseline. Management reserves are for unknown risks, sit outside the baseline, and can only be used with sponsor approval. Finally, remember the broader financial perspective tested on the exam. Life cycle costing, or LCC, is about the big picture cost used in the business case. It includes the total cost of the project or product over its entire life, from development through operations all the way to retirement or disposal. Total cost of ownership, or TCO, is about the true cost of ownership in procurement decision. It looks beyond the initial purchase to include training, maintenance, support, and long-term upgrades. So waterfall cost management is about accurate estimation, building a cost baseline, monitoring with EVM, and controlling variances through formal processes, while also considering the long-term financial picture with LCC and TCO. Now we'll go through practice questions that test your knowledge of estimating techniques, cost baselines, earned value formulas, reserves, and how life cycle costing and total cost of ownership influence decision making. Let's get into the first question on this topic. Question 41. A project manager is launching a predictive project in a highly cost-sensitive government program. Senior leadership emphasizes that cost performance will be audited quarterly. During planning, the team begins estimating activities, but they realize there's confusion about acceptable accuracy ranges and which estimation techniques should be used for different work packages. What should the project manager do first? A. Meet with the finance team to define the accuracy thresholds and apply them across the plan. B. Refer to the schedule management plan to determine which cost estimation methods are appropriate. C. Develop or refine the cost management plan to guide estimating and control procedures. D. Estimate using bottom-up techniques to ensure accuracy across the project. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is C. This question tests your understanding of cost management planning in predictive environments, especially when establishing rules for how costs will be estimated, managed, and reported. Choice C is the best option because the cost management plan defines the framework for cost estimating, budgeting, and control. It includes accuracy thresholds, cost aggregation rules, and preferred techniques, ensuring consistency before estimates begin. Choice A is incorrect. While meeting with finance may help align on thresholds, it's premature without having the full cost management plan in place. Finance provides input, but the PM owns the plan. Choice B is incorrect. The schedule management plan is unrelated to cost estimating techniques. Confusing these two planning documents can lead to inconsistent processes. Choice D is incorrect. Bottom-up estimating is accurate, but diving into estimation without a guiding plan risks misalignment and inconsistent assumptions across work packages. Let's move on to the next question if you're ready. Question 42. A project manager is preparing preliminary cost estimates for a predictive project. The WBS is still under development, but senior leadership has requested a forecast within 2 days to secure initial funding approval. The team has limited access to recent market rates, but possesses cost performance data from past internal projects of varying sizes. Which estimating approach should the project manager use? A. Parametric estimating. B. Bottom-up estimating. C. Analogous estimating. D. Three-point estimating. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is C. This question tests your ability to choose the appropriate cost estimation technique based on the level of project definition, data availability, and time constraints, all critical considerations in predictive planning. Choice C is the best option because the project manager has limited time and only high-level data from past internal projects. Analogous estimating allows for quick estimates by leveraging historical performance from similar efforts, even when the current WBS isn't complete. Choice A is incorrect. Parametric estimating typically requires reliable market data or unit costs, which the team lacks in this case. Choice B is incorrect. Bottom-up estimating is the most detailed and accurate method, but it depends on a completed WBS and takes more time than the situation allows. Choice D is incorrect. Three-point estimating involves range-based uncertainty modeling, but the scenario doesn't suggest detailed risk data or sufficient task-level definition. Let's move on to the next question if you're ready. Question 43. A project manager is finalizing the cost baseline for a predictive infrastructure project. The team has completed bottom-up estimates for all activities and included contingency reserves for known risks. However, the sponsor reminds the project manager that there are still strategic risks that could impact scope and cost, even though they're unlikely. What should the project manager do next? A. Ask the steering committee for additional contingency funding. B. Include a management reserve. C. Recalculate contingency reserves to cover low probability risks. D. Exclude the reserve to preserve baseline integrity. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is B. This question tests your understanding of how to complete the cost baseline in predictive projects by addressing both known and unknown risks through proper reserve planning. Choice B is the best option because a management reserve is designed to address unknown unknowns, those unforeseen events or strategic risks that aren't identified in the risk register. Including it ensures the project is better equipped to handle future surprises without requiring immediate approval. Choice A is incorrect. While involving the steering committee may eventually be necessary if additional funding is needed, at this stage the project manager should include a management reserve as part of proper budget planning, not defer responsibility upward. Choice C is incorrect. Contingency reserves are for known unknowns which are identified risks. Expanding them to cover strategic or unknown risks misuses their intent. Choice D is incorrect. Excluding reserves undermines risk preparedness. The project would be left vulnerable to cost overruns if unexpected risks occur. Let's move on to the next question if you're ready. Question 44. A predictive construction project is midway through execution. The project manager notices that while the earned value matches the planned value, the actual cost is significantly higher than expected. The sponsor is concerned about the trend and wants an update. What should the project manager do first? A. Recommend additional contingency reserves to address the variance. B. Update the risk register to reflect the cost overrun. C. Analyze cost performance and calculate the cost performance index. D. Schedule a meeting with the sponsor to explain the cost variance and corrective actions. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is C. This question tests your ability to apply earned value management principles to monitor and control project costs. Specifically, it focuses on what action a project manager should take first when there's evidence of overspending. Choice C is the best option because the Cost Performance Index is the standard PMI metric used to measure cost efficiency. It's the first step in diagnosing the root cause of a cost variance and preparing a data-driven response for stakeholders. Choice A is incorrect. Recommending additional reserves is premature. The PM must first assess the cost variance using proper performance metrics before considering budget changes. Choice B is incorrect. Updating the risk register is appropriate if a risk caused the overrun, but here the root cause hasn't been identified yet. Choice D is incorrect. Meeting with the sponsor may be necessary later, but it should come after performing proper analysis. Acting without understanding the numbers weakens credibility. Let's move on to the next question if you're ready. Question 45. A project is 60% complete based on earned value analysis. The total project budget, BAC, is $1 million and the project has spent $700,000 so far. However, the planned value at this point in the schedule was $750,000. What do the current EVM indicators suggest? A. The project is under budget and slightly ahead of schedule. B. The project is over budget and slightly behind schedule. C. The project is on budget but significantly behind schedule. D. The project is under budget but behind schedule. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is B. This question tests your ability to apply core EVM formulas and interpret cost and schedule performance. You must calculate earned value and then compare it to planned value and actual cost to assess project health. Choice B is the best option because earned value, EV, equals 60% times $1 million equals $600,000. Actual cost, AC, equals $700,000, which means the project has spent more than earned value. In other words, the project is over budget. Planned value, PV, is $750,000, which means the project has completed less than the planned value. In other words, the project is behind schedule. Choices A, C, and D are incorrect. Let's move on to the next question if you're ready. Question 46. A project has the following performance data. Budget at completion, BAC $900,000. Earned value, EV, is $450,000. Actual cost, AC, is $500,000. Planned value, PV, is $600,000. What is the estimate at completion, EAC, assuming current cost performance continues? A. $900,000. B. $1 million. C. $1,200,000. D. $1,100,000. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is B. This question tests your knowledge of earned value forecasting formulas, specifically how to apply EAC when assuming current cost performance will continue for the remainder of the project. Choice B is the best option because the correct formula in this case is EAC equals BAC divided by CPI, where CPI equals EV divided by AC equals 450,000 divided by 500,000 equals 0.9. So EAC equals 900,000 divided by 0.9 equals $1 million. Choices A, C, and D are incorrect. Let's move on to the next question if you're ready. Question 47. 3 months into a predictive infrastructure project, the project manager reviews earned value metrics. Cost performance index equals 1.12. Schedule performance index equals 0.85. The sponsor requests a progress briefing during the monthly governance review. The project has strict delivery milestones and limited schedule flexibility. What should the project manager report? A. The project is on track to finish within budget but risks delay if schedule performance doesn't improve. B. The project's cost efficiency is offsetting the schedule delays, so no corrective action is needed. C. The schedule performance is acceptable for now, but costs must be closely monitored going forward. D. Since SPI is below 1, the project is at high risk of exceeding the budget unless reserves are applied. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is A. This question tests your ability to interpret EVM metrics in context, specifically CPI and SPI, and communicate realistic project status during governance reviews. In predictive environments, both schedule and cost metrics matter, especially when milestones are fixed. Choice A is the best option because a CPI of 1.12 shows the project is spending efficiently. It's getting more value for each dollar spent. However, an SPI of 0.85 indicates work is not progressing as quickly as planned. With tight deadlines, this presents a schedule risk that should be communicated and addressed. Choice B is incorrect. Cost efficiency is good, but it does not eliminate the need to manage delays, especially when deadlines are inflexible. Choice C is incorrect. The schedule performance is the main issue, not cost. Focusing on cost diverts attention from the primary concern. Choice D is incorrect. SPI below 1 reflects schedule risk, not cost overrun. Applying reserves is not appropriate unless there's a defined risk being realized. Let's move on to the next question if you're ready. Question 48. During planning for a large predictive project with multiple subcontractors, the project manager develops a detailed cost baseline. However, the finance department informs the PM that funding will be released in quarterly installments not aligned with the planned expenditures. What should the project manager do next? A. Submit a change request to adjust the scope and reduce short-term costs. B. Reallocate contingency reserves to cover early expenditures and avoid delays. C. Proceed with the original plan and flag the funding constraint as a risk. D. Adjust the schedule to align activities with the timing of available funding. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is D. This question tests your understanding of funding limit reconciliation, which ensures that planned expenditures align with the actual availability of funds, a critical element in cost management for predictive projects. Choice D is the best option because reconciling funding constraints typically involves adjusting the schedule to align with the funding timeline. This keeps the project within its approved funding limits and avoids creating cash flow problems or needing premature budget changes. Choice A is incorrect. Adjusting the project scope is unnecessary unless the funding issue cannot be resolved through other methods. This would be a more extreme response. Choice B is incorrect. Contingency reserves are for known risks, not for managing cash flow constraints. Misusing them could cause budget issues later. Choice C is incorrect. Simply flagging the issue as a risk does not resolve the misalignment and may lead to actual delays or cost problems during execution. Let's move on to the next question if you're ready. Question 49. A project manager is leading a predictive project to deliver a custom data center for a public agency. During planning, the sponsor emphasizes minimizing total long-term costs, including energy consumption, maintenance, and system upgrades over the facility's lifespan. What approach should the project manager apply? A. Incorporate lifecycle costing into decision-making during planning and procurement. B. Use expected monetary value, EMV, to assess risk costs during execution rather than plan for long-term operational expenses. C. Apply total cost of ownership, TCO, analysis separately during project planning to estimate future costs. D. Prioritize project cost reduction strategies to minimize budget variance. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is A. This question tests your understanding of lifecycle costing, a cost management technique that considers not just the project budget, but also the total cost of ownership over the product's lifetime. It's especially relevant in predictive projects involving infrastructure, where long-term maintenance, energy, and upgrade costs significantly affect overall value. Choice A is the best option because it correctly applies lifecycle costing during project planning, ensuring procurement and design decisions consider both immediate and future costs. Choice B is incorrect. EMV is a valuable risk management tool, but it focuses on probabilistic cost outcomes, not total long-term cost considerations. It doesn't replace lifecycle costing. Choice C is incorrect. TCO and lifecycle costing are closely related, but treating TCO as a separate analysis outside of the integrated planning process leads to fragmented decision-making. The project manager should embed lifecycle thinking into scope, procurement, and design decisions. Choice D is incorrect. Reducing costs during the project may seem helpful, but it risks sacrificing long-term value. For example, cutting quality to stay under budget could increase maintenance costs later. Let's move on to the next question if you're ready. Question 50. During cost planning for a complex predictive project, the team includes extra funds to address specific risks such as known site access delays and expected vendor price fluctuations. The sponsor later asks if additional budget should be set aside for unknown risks that may emerge during execution. How should the project manager respond? A. Recommend placing additional funds in the contingency reserve to address emerging unknown risks. B. Explain that the contingency reserve is already sufficient and covers all types of future uncertainties. C. Propose creating a management reserve under sponsor control to address unforeseen and undefined risks. D. Allocate a portion of the contingency reserve for management reserve to simplify oversight and approvals. You can pause the video here if you need more time to work on the question. The correct answer is C. This question tests your understanding of how reserves are categorized and managed in predictive projects, especially the distinction between contingency reserves and management reserves during cost planning. Choice C is the best option because PMI defines management reserves as funds set aside for unknown unknowns, events that cannot be specifically identified during planning. These reserves are not included in the cost baseline and are typically controlled by upper management or the sponsor, not the project manager. Choice A is incorrect. Contingency reserves are for known unknowns or identified risks that have been analyzed. Using them for unknown risks would misapply their purpose. Choice B is incorrect. Contingency reserves do not cover all uncertainties. They do not account for unforeseen or undefined risks. That's what management reserves are for. Choice D is incorrect. Management reserves must be separately identified and managed outside of the cost baseline. Combining them with contingency reserves would violate cost planning best practices and reduce financial transparency. You've now completed all 10 questions for cost management in waterfall projects. Great work. You're now 50 questions into your PMP exam journey. 1/3 of the way there. Stay sharp, stay focused, and let's keep pushing forward.